I don't know, man. Something just isn't right about this place.
Aw, don't tell me you're afraid of the dark.
So what if I am? I vote we get out of here. That's what I vote.
Alright, fine. We'll leave right after we get the famed occult gem. This has the potential to make us rich.
No, bro. Let's just leave. I am telling you something does not feel right.
Sorry, man, I didn't catch that. What did you say?
I told you, bro.
Zip it. Hello YouTube and welcome back to the Theory Crafters, a show that sometimes can get a little dark. Speaking of a little dark, the next cave biome we're exploring today is none other than the Forlorn Hollows. This cave is characterized by its large canyon-like formations and unforgiving darkness. I'm not kidding. Your eyes might as well be closed when exploring this place, because you're better off blind using echolocation to navigate this cave. This video will be a bit different than the previous 4 biomes we have covered because the Forlorn Hollows isn't necessarily part of the overarching narrative regarding the human story of the mod. Nevertheless, we will make our best attempt to construct a narrative that we feel could be fitting for the Forlorn Hollows. So strap in fellas, we're about to go deep and we're about to go dark. Very, very dark. Many hundreds of years ago, people began looking for ways to power their furnaces to heat up during the cold winters. To aid in this, people needed something that is easy to burn and something that could be available in the masses. While not easily obtainable during the time, coal was the perfect material to burn that achieves the desired result. Coal was first being mined on Earth in the early 1600s in both Virginia and the United Kingdom. While in Virginia, coal mining was cut short due to Native American wars, in the UK the first coal mining pits were established that exploited surface outcrops. Although coal mining wouldn't achieve its peak until the late 1700s, early developing civilizations had to start their operations at some point. Where in the real world, we sent down profession-based miners with pickaxes and hard hats, in Minecraft we have a lot more leniency when it comes to telling stories. In Minecraft, there are very clearly humanoid animal people such as the piglins in the nether. So couldn't there be, say, Molemen in the overworld? I'd say so. Molemen would establish their homes buried under the surface dirt of the overworld, but may have emerged to the surface in search of trading. While humans traded with the Molemen, it was clear that the humans didn't really like them, and may have looked down upon them almost as an inferior culture. After all, living underground and taking dirt showers as moles tend to do would certainly rub people of this time the wrong way. In essence, humans had to force themselves to interact with the Molemen. However, when coal mining first began, they could no longer willingly be blind to their talent as miners. The humans would think that if they employed the Molemen to do their dirty work, literally they would be able to limit their interaction with them and gain something out of it, being coal. Molemen, being relatively simple-minded people, wouldn't think much of it and saw it as friends helping friends. After all, who doesn't want friends? The Molemen would then begin their mining endeavors in an ever-expanding search for coal. Luckily, coal was quite abundant in the crust, but due to their efficiency, every day they would have to expand their tunnels further and further to maintain a consistent coal output. Because they were moving further away with every passing day, their work hours would become longer and would take longer to return the coal back to the people. The people would not take too kindly to these delays and would begin getting onto the Molemen. They would yell at them for taking too long and would put the deaths of their own people on the clock of the Molemen, essentially blaming them for not bringing the coal back in time to warm them up. The Molemen would also begin to feel frustrated as they know they're doing good work, but the people only viewed the negatives. One day, while digging around for coal, a Molemen would encounter a strange red stone, a gem almost. The gem seemed to have an inscribed eye within the middle of it. Thinking it could be worth a lot, the Molemen brought it back to the people. The people, however, would not have been happy with this Molemen for not bringing back enough coal to sustain their population. As punishment, they would publicly humiliate the Molemen, shaming them for the whole village to see. When the mockery was over, the Molemen went back to his home in the ground and stared at the gem. Listening closely, the Molemen could hear disembodied whispers coming from the gem. Upon closer inspection, the gem glowed a bright red for a brief moment, but then quickly erupted into a glorious dark scream. Darkness surrounded the Molemen, but in the black cloud, a single red eye eye made its presence known. The Moleman noticed it, but quickly after he looked directly into the eye, it disappeared, and the dark cloud evaporated. The next day, the Moleman discussed with his peers about what had happened last night with the gem. Intrigued, they asked to investigate the gem further. Perhaps it could help them win the hearts of the people who hated them. The Molemen did not understand the power held within the gem. For all they knew, it could be possible to do anything with it. That same day, the Molemen went to the people and showcased the gem one more time. They called upon the power within and claimed to the people it could create infinite coal for their furnaces, even though they didn't actually know that it could do that. Instead of fulfilling the promise of infinite coal, darkness would surround the gem, and instead of giving coal, it burned out any light in the village, including the warming fires. Seeing their fires burn out, the people erupted in anger and fear, as all they saw was witchcraft. They saw moles wielding unholy power, and they had to do something about it. The people would take the Moleman who had found the gem and put him on trial. When he was found guilty of witchcraft, the people would send him to the gallows and give him the death penalty. Upon the hanging of the Moleman, the mole people would see that all of their hard work meant nothing if they could be killed anyway. In fear, they all buried themselves deep into the ground, angry with the people they desperately tried to please. Plagued by fear and poisoned with anger, the Molemen were hell-bent on bringing justice to their prosecutors. Luckily, they had just the gem to do that. After a while of digging and mining, the gem that the Molemen had in possession began to pulsate, indicating a change in spiritual energy. They used the gem almost as a compass, leading them to somewhere they had no idea existed. Finally, the gem stopped pulsating once the Molemen fell into a huge open cavern. The gem seemed to have stabilized. Perhaps they had reached where it originated? At this point, the Molemen were still blinded by anger, their desire to bring justice to their fellow Moleman who was executed in front of their eyes burning brightly. They began consulting the gem, wondering what they could do to avenge their friend. The gem's whispers were faint, but what the Molemen could make out was that they seemed to need an observer, some entity that could be a pair of eyes and spy on those who wronged them. The gem told them that they needed to find a vessel that could be their eyes. In their new environment, the Molemen could barely see in the dark, so were naturally drawn towards anything that they could see. The thing they landed on was the glue moth, a large passive insect whose wings glowed a bright red pattern. This stood out from the pitch-black darkness of the cave, and this is how the Molemen caught it. The gem instructed them to begin a ritual, and that they did. Of course, the Molemen didn't know what they were doing, but were just following orders, blind to the moral implications of what they were doing due to anger. A few minutes into the ritual, the Molemen heard a dark cloud open above their heads. This cloud had eyes open and dark tentacles extending from the poofs of dark smoke. This would make itself known to the Molemen as the Umber Lord. The ritual began to conclude when the cloud lowered itself into the glue moth, and the moth's body began to become something else, something stranger, more evil. What the Moleman saw following the sacrifice was some form of humanoid with moth wings extending from its face. Or was it the face? Regardless, the creature had taken on a ghostly form upon manifestation, and seemed to fly away toward the direction in which the Molemen had come. Hours passed and the creature returned, bearing yet another red gem that was used to locate the canyon to begin with. When the Molemen gazed into the gem, they could see figures and what appeared to be some structure. This felt familiar to them, until finally they realized that what they were looking at was the very village that chased them away. The same village that executed one of their own. The gem acted as almost a live feed that would allow the Molemen to spy on their enemies. For this gift, the Molemen gave the creature that bestowed them this power the name Watcher. Using their new eyes, the moles began to conspire against the village, hoping to avenge their fallen friend. They created plans to attack the village under the blanket of moonlight and use their dark powers to inflict unspeakable damage upon them. Bent on revenge, the Molemen had to consult with the original gem they found on how they could allow the Umber Lord's power to manifest to destroy their foes. The gem told them that they needed yet another vessel, not that of a harmless insect, but of a predator. However, in order to bring about the power necessary to create such a horrific creature, the Molemen needed to channel their darkness. To do so, new cloaks and robes were made of dark tatters, an essential conduit of pure darkness to form shadow silk. With a wardrobe change, the moles were now officially indoctrinated into the cult. They were no longer Molemen, but underzealots. These became the conduit for the Umberlord, whose plan is to one day shroud Minecraft's world in a blanket of pure darkness, an eternal night ruled by a red moon that never sets, and all who live in the world should bow down to the Umberlord, or face never seeing light again. Life in the Forlorn Hollows must have been incredibly dreary. Some of the structures found here are homes haphazardly built from the planks of the native thornwood tree that grows down here. Other structures serve as dark churches, but one thing remains consistent throughout all the types of buildings: a banner with what seems to be the eye of the Umberlord. This banner may be what the Underzealots believe to be the all-observing oculars of their dark god. They believe that they were always being watched, and that if the Umberlord sees them worship the banner, great fortune would fall upon them. The first structure we can talk about is this, that appears to be a totem of the Watcher. It is unclear as to why the Underzealots created this totem, but it could serve as a way to honor the spies of the Forlorn Hollows. The Watchers were the eyes of the Underzealots outside of their caves, and would aid in the gathering of information to conduct the attacks of darkness against the villages that wronged them. It is also possible that Watchers do last a finite amount of time. How, you ask? Well, Watchers do not naturally spawn in the Forlorn Hollows, and must be brought into the world via Underzealot ritual. But if Watchers existed in the story we will discuss in this video, what happened to them? I believe that over time, Watchers may have some of their dark influence dissipate and their bodies stiffen up as a result. Eventually, they could become so stiff that they would become inanimate. But CMC, that sounds ridiculous, I hear you saying. But what if I told you that if we take a look at the Watcher's design, thornwood branches are seen extending out of the side of its head. In the totem, those very same thornwood branches are extending out of the, you guessed it, side of its head. The banner was placed after the stiffening of the Watcher's body as a way to symbolize that its eyes were incredibly valuable, and should be why the Watchers remembered. The candles on top of the totem could simply be a way that the Underzealots mourned the loss of the Watchers. The next structure we're going to take a look at is this dilapidated old shack. Within the shack appears to be an altar and two of the banners we were discussing earlier. This building had to be a place where the Underzealots placed lesser sacrifices to offer to their profane god. It could also have been a place where they brought prisoners that would be much greater sacrifices, given that the altar is 2 meters long, large enough for a standard Minecraft character. Hold on, prisoners? Of course! The Underzealots would take any being unfortunate enough to be chosen for sacrifice and bring them to the altar. However, to keep them secure before the time came for the sacrifice to go underway, they would need a place to hold them. In this building, we can see what appears to be a thornwood cage made of fences. It could be here where they held the Gloomoths, Vespers, and even humans before they were killed by a ritualistic blade known as the Desolate Dagger. This structure differs from the other because it is absolutely not built out of easily destroyed materials, suggesting that this structure was incredibly important to the Underzealots. This structure represents the idol. The idol is what would hold the village at the mercy of its many hands once released. This structure was built by the Underzealots and would serve as almost a second god to them, just under the Umberlord itself. The creature it depicts would be the perfect vessel for the Umberlord to bring the destruction of nearly anything, only to be outdone by one thing. However, both of these creatures will be talked about later in the video. Littering the Forlorn Hollows are large bridges. While it's difficult to explain their use or why they are so prevalent, we can do our best to give a story to them. The Thornwood bridges were likely built to cross the large gaps between the canyon-like formations within the caves. They could also have been built to aid in the transportation of worthy vessels to their sacrificial location. Otherwise, if you have any theories about the Forlorn bridges, let us know in the comments. The structure we will talk about last is this small obelisk. Although it doesn't appear to be much, it has some important implications to the lore of the Forlorn Hollows. At the top of the obelisk is an all-seeing eye, and trailing down in a swirling pattern are a few lesser eyes. To me, this trail of eyes reads as a dark, ghostly trail coming from the eye. This obelisk is supposed to represent the Umberlord. If we compare the trail of the small eyes coming from the big eyes, it almost reads as a direct comparison as when an Underzealot ritual is underway and tentacles come out from the void cloud.
Whoa, who is this presidency? I am Piam Piam, the other editor of this channel. Seems he has told me he's a dum-dum face and miss several structures, and that would be cool to have me voice the segment he missed. So, here I go. The first thing I want to mention is that the top of the idol's statue is an eye, and that the eye can be indicative of the fact that the idol is acting as a vessel for the Umberlord. The eye is an exact eye seen when the Umber Zealots conduct a ritual on something. I believe this is a way to be consistent about both the creatures created via ritual. Because both have heavenly symbolism of eyes, the Watcher is obviously the eyes of the Umberlord and drops an occult gem, which has an eye on it. And the idol statues showcase an eye on the top of its head where its brain would be. This house seems as though it is an ordinary house, well, as ordinary as it can be in a cave about a cult. It is what we thought when we first saw it too, but upon closer inspection, it reveals more about what rituals would have looked like before the Molemen have officially perfected their dark powers. It appears that the ritual circles were written on the floor in redstone or even blood. The fact that the ritual drawing on the ground is on a separate, yet still connected part of the house shows that the early rituals may have not been fully understood, and Molemen feared unleashing dark power onto their own homes. For this reason, they likely kept their rituals separate from their homes early on. These eventually form a small communities of dark followers. This structure appears to be the shape of a chapel, or at least a perverted form of one. Chapels in real life are built to look like a cross when seen from a bird's eye view. This chapel, however, seems to have been built to be a warped and twisted version of a church. While you can see two arms extending from the middle, it is missing the bottom of the cross. On top of the chapel, we see a small block that is supposed to be a representative of the idol. And given it is on top of the building, we can assume that this is what they were worshipping here. Perhaps, even, that this is where they were trying to bring forth their forsaken idol into the real world. Within this chapel are the remnants of a sacrifice displayed proudly on a shelf. Lastly, this small totem is supposed to represent that idol, built from a thornwood log and its fence. It was topped off by a small rendition of the idol, likely carved from another thornwood log. This totem is covered by candles, thus indicating this is a sacred to the Underzealots, and they regularly worship this totem pole. But what is so important about this creature? Why do we spend all this time talking about it?
With a cavern of this size, there's bound to be a few bats. Additionally, if a cavern of this size has a significant population of large insects in the form of glue moths, bats must adapt to the size of their prey to survive. For this reason, Vespers evolved and roost on the ceilings of the Forlorn Hollows. When hungry, Vespers will swoop down to consume their favorite snack, being the glue moths, regardless of where it is in the cavern. I say this part because sometimes if a glue moth is being sacrificed during an Underzealot ritual, a Vesper can swoop down and eat the moth and end up being the one sacrificed. The Underzealots had poor eyesight due to being in the dark for too long, and would hardly notice a difference. If a ritual should succeed on a Vesper, it would become what the Underzealots had hoped for. They would have unknowingly brought forth their idol, the Forsaken. This quadruped had immense strength and an additional 2 arms to aid them in any attack. This would be the creature depicted in the structure, and the Underzealots could not be any more prideful. This creature irradiated with darkness, and his pure evil would spread across the entire Forlorn Hollows, coating it with a near pitch blackness. This is but a preview of what the Minecraft world will look like if the Umberlord takes over and spreads its pure darkness. With this evil spreading like a plague, other creatures not already affected by the darkness would begin to turn and mutate, changed by the evil. One such would be a generic mole rat, that when exposed to the darkness would change into what we now recognize as a corrodent, an animal so corrupt that the near sight of a light source is enough to scare it away. These possessed a similar ability to the original Molemen, and are able to dig through nearly any surface, important for when the Underzealots would attack the village who killed one of their own. Alas, the Underzealots had one more goal. They wanted to give their dark god the ability to interact with their world. They wanted to see it, touch it, follow it, and rule with it. But to bring it to the world, a suitable vessel must be found to hold the immense power of the Umberlord. Something with dexterity, something like us. You see, the Underzealots not only wanted to avenge their executed one, but also seek to bring home a prisoner to serve as a host for the Umberlord. If successful, this would become the Oracle, something so evil and so dark that it would have the tools necessary to rule the world. After all, isn't that what mankind wants? Don't we want to rule the world? The Underzealots now had what they needed to raid the village. It all began on a cool evening. The sun set and the villagers had no reason to suspect a night any different from any other. Boy, were they wrong. On the night of the new moon, the Underzealots emerged from the surface just on the outskirts of the village, looking upon the prize they will soon claim. The Corotans were the first to emerge inside the walls of the village. Villagers awoke to foul creatures screeching at them. Using their enormous singular tooth, they would bite at the villagers' feet. Some screamed in pain and others died of blood loss. The village had gone full alert and guards lit their lanterns to see what the commotion was all about. The eerie silence was deafening, and citizens could only hear the soft breeze of rustling plants as the wind caressed the blades of grass and stems of flowers. The silence was broken when an Underzealot dug in the middle of town, under the dim light of a hanging lantern. People scouting the streets of the village noticed this short little mole man standing under the light, menacingly. Villagers slowly approached the little mole until yet another breeze came through the village. This one moved interestingly. It almost seemed to be directed by something, and the breeze had extinguished the flames of the village. One by one, candles lost their light, lanterns were abruptly turned off, and the villagers were left confused and frightened. More and more Underzealots began emerging from the ground, one holding the last flame. The Underzealot quickly blew out the flame, and this is when the chaos began. The Underzealots overtook the guards, taking them out with their dark daggers. Soon the ground began erupting with cracks, with dark hands flying out of the crevices. Corotants dug out of the ground and lunged at the villagers. Most were successful in overtaking and killing the citizens that tried to flee. Out of the crevices formed by darkness crawled out the Forsakens. The huge demon bats ran rampant through the streets of the village, nearly unstoppable. With their sharp teeth, large arms, and quick movement, the villagers didn't stand a chance. In a few brief moments, the bodies piled in the streets, and all that was left was one person. This person was fittingly the one who called upon the execution of the first Moleman, and thus was the one the Underzealots took hostage. When they retreated back into the Forlorn Hollows, the person was thrown into the cage, awaiting their time for sacrifice. When the moment came, the Underzealots carried the man to the church with the altar. While they begged and pleaded, the Underzealot paid them no mind, and prepared the desolate dagger. Once ready, the person let out one last plea for help, which fell upon deaf ears. The Underzealot plunged the dagger into the heart of the person, and the Underzealots could now confidently say that their work in the village was done. However, it is clear that this was not the right vessel for the Oracle. We don't know why this man wasn't fit for the Oracle's powers, and it is likely we will never know. Maybe humans are just flawed in the sense that we can't or shouldn't hold incredible power. Maybe it's best we stay in our own lane and not seek all-encompassing power. Sadly, if there's one thing we know about us, it is that power drives us. An oracle is one who holds insight, provides wise counsel, and can sometimes be synonymous with prophets, or at least interacts with them. These are likely the necessary requirements for the oracle to successfully possess a vessel, and no one up to this point has been successfully sacrificed by the Underzealots to give rise to the oracle. That is, until you came along. The story of the Forlorn Hollows is quite an interesting one. There are quite a few open ends that I'm afraid aren't easy to seal up given the state of the Forlorn Hollows in-game. However, that isn't a bad thing. I know I had a ton of fun writing the story for the Forlorn Hollows through my interpretation of the structures, and I'd encourage you all to do the same. In more good news, it may be possible for the Forlorn Hollows to receive more content in the future of the Minecraft mod, and if that happens, you can bet we will do a follow-up video. Admittedly, we took a lot of leaps in logic and narrative devices to tell the story we chose to tell, but we hope that it was at least an entertaining one. The penultimate video for Alex's Caves will cover the Candy Cavity, where witches left their villages and ended up creating the sweetest cavern you've ever seen. Of course, this comes with the sourest creatures. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to catch you next time. Thank you all for 1,000 subscribers, it really means a lot. Wait, if you're not caught up with the story up to this point, check out the playlist we have in the description, or you can check out the last video we did on the Toxic Caves. And one last thing, please make sure to check out our Discord in the description below.